Afternoon, everybody. My name's Don. The Polycom is finally working, and I want to welcome everybody to Dr. Sound Academy. So let's get started since I already delayed it a little bit. You know, Dr. Sound has received a lot of requests, a lot of questions about paging systems, what's involved, how to design it, the equipment needed. So we thought that this would make a great topic. Paging, we see it in everyday activities, different things that we do, but we especially know about use it during an emergency. So today we're going to cover what you need to know, what you should be looking at when you approach your client's space, the room, what to look for, and then once you do that, speakers that are appropriate for the application. Same with amplifiers, microphones, as well as emergency paging. We'll cover that too. Paging, really, what is it? It's about communication. It's about communicating to a room, to a building, to an area, to everyone in that area. But if nobody can understand it, then the system really is useless. So there's a number of factors to consider. Is the area that you're paging into a large reverberant space? The one pictured there, it's an airport terminal. Is this what the customer is asking you to put paging into? Or is it a small space, an office, with that's not reverberant at all? It's carpeted and it's typical 10-foot, 12-foot ceilings. Would you be paging outside? Each situation presents certain challenges, so we'll be looking at that today. Ambient noise. Not only do you have to know the characteristics of the room, how large it is, architecturally what factors are involved, but you have to think about ambient noise as well. Is there a high level of ambient noise, and is it constant? Are you trying to page into an area where there is machinery working, and there are people working with that machinery and need to be contacted? How do we do that? Does the ambient change dramatically? Is it a train platform? Is it a bus station? Is it a factory where machinery goes on and off? Is it an area where people, great groups of people come in and the ambient goes way up and then it clears out again? So these are all things that you have to consider when you're looking at designing an intelligible system. Certainly, it would be useless if you're trying to page and the ambient's just washing everything out. So it would be, you want to really be thinking about that and about how we can make it as intelligible as possible. This information that we just looked at is going to help us determine the type of speaker that we should use. So if we go to the next slide, selecting a speaker. For an intelligible system, you need the right speaker. So we're going to consider a few things: dispersion, sensitivity of the speaker, power and distance, as well as frequency response. These are all important things to look at. When we look at dispersion, perhaps you're looking at an area that you need to cover, maybe a large area, a large office with low ceilings, using ceiling speakers, maybe a hotel lobby or a retail sales floor. You would probably use a wide dispersion speaker with this. Why would you do that? When you think about a flashlight and you're standing next to a wall and you're shining the flashlight on the wall, if you're standing quite close to the wall, the circle of light isn't very large, is it? The light doesn't cover a very large area. So to cover more area while standing in the same spot, you'd really need a light that spreads out wider. It's not so focused. And it's the same with wide dispersion speakers. When the speakers are mounted in a ceiling that's not too high at all, you're going to need a speaker that will be able to send out sound to the sides quite a bit, spread out quite a bit. A common rule when spacing speakers in a room is ceiling height times 1.5. So if the ceiling is 10 feet, the speakers should be spaced every 15. You can also use TOA's speaker placement software that's available on our website for free, and you can download it. It's actually really quite easy to use. If you have any trouble, just let us know. You download it, open it up. There's the software itself, and then data. All of our speakers are already there, all of their settings and presets. So you would select a speaker, and it would actually the software automatically can space speakers out in a room. You just add the room dimensions, and it'll show you how the speakers would perform in that space. It's actually really great to use. It would be a good idea if you haven't seen it, maybe to download it and play with it, because it's really something, a great tool to have to give you a good start and to be able to select different TOA speakers to see how each performs. It's very interesting. In this scenario, a hotel lobby, we probably suggest 2352, an F-Series 2352C with a 170-degree dispersion angle. You can see there our little figure. The area is covered quite a bit, and you can see the next speaker over. As long as the audience plane, which is their ear level, is always covered throughout the room, that way everybody will hear the page properly, and it'll be a successful system. What about that very large room that we were talking about? That airport terminal. It could be a really tough space to work with. Hard surfaces. Architecturally, it's very different. Did you see the ceiling was curved, and there's all sorts of different things going on. Plus, the number of people coming in and out, the ambient is going up and down. How are we going to address everyone there? Well, you could work with our narrow dispersion line arrays, the SRS or SRH series of line array. These speakers, line arrays are great because they can send sound in a very focused way directly to your audience. No sound will be bouncing up into the ceiling or bouncing off the floor. When you have a very reverberant room, you're going to get lots of reflections, and what ends up happening is that the message ends up being canceled out. The consonants are washed out, and it becomes that muffled joke that we all joke about train stations, and you can never quite understand what's being said. So you want to avoid that. What you want to do is send the announcement with a more focused speaker, and that way allowing the audience to be able to hear what's being said a lot easier. It's a very tricky situation, but certainly we can help you with that. But this is maybe one speaker where you'd want to start looking at in this space. I'm sure you've seen this spec before. Let's talk about it. We're talking about sensitivity. When a speaker receives 1 watt of power, it will produce a certain amount of sound pressure in decibels when you're standing at 1 meter. So this particular speaker, when you send 1 watt of power to it, will produce 90 decibels at 1 meter. The more sensitive, the better for paging. Less wattage is required and so forth, but this is a good thing to remember. Let's keep that slide in mind, 90 decibels at 1 watt at 1 meter, because we're going to be talking about power and distance. This is these formulas are really good to remember. If you write anything down, I would write these down for sure. Power. Doubling the power will increase the SPL by 3 decibels. So if in the previous speaker we had 1 watt going to the speaker and it was producing 90 decibels at 1 meter. If we sent 2 watts, it would produce 93 decibels at 1 meter. There is, on the back of a lot of our speakers, there is, the 70-volt speakers, there is a tap. There's a switch. And there's a tap setting, and you can actually select the power that each speaker will use. If we need the audience level to be 90 decibels, perhaps to overcome noise, we can switch the power switch appropriately. Let's talk about distance as well before I get any further. When we talk about distance, if you double the distance, you lose 6 decibels. So 90 decibels at 1 meter, at 2 meters, it's 84 decibels. So if the audience level, you can see our figure there on the right, if the audience level, their ear level, is at 2 meters from the speaker, and 90 decibels is required down where he is, maybe because of ambient noise, we need to increase the power to recover that 6 decibels that we lost because of the distance. So instead of tapping the speaker at 1 decibel, instead of tapping the speaker at 1 watt, we would need to double it again to 4 watts. It's producing 96 decibels at 1 meter when we're standing at 1 meter, but at the audience level, it's now at 90 decibels. So we know that each speaker in this area needs to be set at 4 watts. Frequency response is also very important when we're looking at when we're looking at speakers. We should remember that specific frequencies are really important, very critical to speech. 500 hertz, 1,000 hertz, but especially the 2,000 hertz band really helps with a lot of the intelligibility issues that are had. So you would want to make sure that the frequency response is appropriate in the speakers that you select. So let's look at a few situations. You have a warehouse. This is something that's very common. I was just recently at a warehouse helping an end user. There are specific challenges here. High ceilings, tall racks filled with boxes that really absorb sound. You really need something focused. A focused speaker with high SPL will work very well here. Something like our SC series horns. You're able to throw a good distance. There's enough power that it'll reach the person in these narrow canyons so that you'll be able to find everyone. You'll need to mount them in specific places along the walls. Perhaps, depending on how the racks are configured, there will be posts available. But you're going to need something like a horn to really push the sound out and be able to reach people as they're working in the warehouse. How about high ceilings? Maybe you're working on a convention center. Maybe you're working on a mall. And there's high ceilings and the client is asking for ceiling speakers. What are we going to do here? You're going to need a speaker that has a more narrow dispersion path. And also you're going to need a speaker that has the power required to reach the audience at the greater distance. You're going to need less speakers, certainly, because the speaker is higher, and just like with a flashlight, as you move back, shining the flashlight at the wall, the area that the light covers increases dramatically. So too with a speaker that's placed quite high, less speakers are required to cover the area, but you are going to need a speaker that doesn't disperse as much as, for instance, the 2352 that we talked about in a previous slide. You're going to need something like the 2852 a more narrow dispersion, but also with the power to push down to the audience plane. You can see the figure is a lot smaller, it's a lot further away from the speaker. And using the formulas that we were talking about, you will have to increase the tap setting on the back, increase the watts put out by the speaker in order to make up for that. But the 2852 is an excellent speaker for that situation. So you got your speakers. Maybe you're already using the TOA speaker software to get an idea of how they should be spaced out. You know the power required. So for instance, in that space where we're using, if we go back to the slide with the speaker with that needs 4 watts, needs to be tapped at 4 watts, perhaps you need 20 speakers to cover that space properly. 20 times 4 watts, that's 80 watts of power that you'd require. Very good. So let's proceed by now selecting an amplifier that would match the situation. For office paging, or for situations where the ceilings are low, it's not very reverberant at all, it's a carpeted area, you would probably be very well suited, the BG series is very well suited for that situation, or even the A5000. The BG series goes from 20 watts right up to 240 watts. The A5000, we have 2 options, the 60 or the 120. Great thing about the A5000 is that it comes with DSP software. So you can set the EQ for the room and just draw out and make the room sound all the more better with some various settings that are available via the software. But the point is that if you're looking for a small single all-call situation where it's a single area that you're going to be paging into, the BG series or the A5000 would work very well. Does the system that you're working on require different zones? Could it be a 2-zone system? A very common paging system that I see quite a bit is you've got the office in the front and the warehouse in the back. You could use our M9000 M2 mixer along with a DA series power amplifier. They come in a 2-channel or a 4-channel. The 4-channel is pictured there. The office wouldn't need a lot of power, but you would need 1 channel for the office area, and the 2nd channel could support the warehouse area where more power would be required. Is it maybe it's even a small grocery store that has 4 zones: the actual sales floor, the stock room, the offices upstairs, maybe even the staff room. You could use the M9000 mixer and a DA250 4-channel amplifier right there, 4 zones. Here's an example of a sports complex. It's a multi-zone paging example in a sports complex. You can see at the top left the head end, and you can see the microphone there. All pages are made at the head end there. You can see in the other 3 zones, there are mixers and amplifiers, local mixers and amplifiers in each zone. So each zone is able to play its own program, play its own music. In the gym, maybe in the fitness area, there is an aerobics class going on. In aquatics, in the swimming pool, we've got a mixer with 2 4-channel amps. So there's a lot of things going on. But what's great is that the paging function from the head end, you can see the connection with the wiring diagram that goes to each of the preamp mixers in each zone. So when a page goes out, it could be made as a priority so that all the programs are muted so that the page can be heard properly in each zone. You'll notice, too, that in the gym and the aquatics, those are very reverberant spaces, hard walls, floors, ceilings, really tough to have a program in there at all. So you can see they're using various different types of speakers, maybe HX5s, line arrays to help with sending the program in a more focused way as well. So we know the amplifier, but how are pages sent? How are pages made? Does the client want to use a microphone? Does the client want to use the telephone? If it's an all one zone system, they could use our PM660U desk mic, which is there with the orange button. If there are multiple zones, you could use the QRM9012, which was pictured in our sports complex. You'll see that there's buttons along the side there, 1 through 10. Those buttons could be programmed so that they could page into a singular zone. So if I wanted to page into the fitness area only, maybe I would hit button number 2. But I also have the ability to make an all-call page so that my announcement goes everywhere. Perhaps a telephone is preferred, and the office has an IP phone system. What do you do then? We have our SP11N SIP module that can be used to make the connection between the IP, the VoIP phone system, and your paging system. It can be used with any of our amplifier series that have module ports. The BG series, 900, 9000, all of these can use this module. It can be connected to an IP network and directly registered as one SIP phone station. So then it would be as simple as dialing an extension to make a page. So that's something that we can do as well. Emergency paging. This is getting, there are more and more requests for this all the time. Perhaps your customer is looking for an emergency PA. The VM3240 VA that's pictured there is just made for this situation. Ideal for small to medium-sized applications, office buildings, factories, even malls. The VM3000 is the world's first voice evacuation system to comply with both the American and Canadian mass notification standards. It includes features like backup power, a built-in digital message repeater, and that speaker line supervision. The box you see there has 6 zones with 240 watts over 6 zones, but it can be expanded to as many as 60 by adding VM3240E extension boxes. Your customer, but you know what's something that makes this emergency paging system unique is that really you can use this in everyday paging. You can run background music through it and make everyday regular pages with the QRM9012 microphone that we talked about before. But when it comes to an emergency, you're also able to use this in an emergency situation. The digital message repeater could have everyday messages, but there can also be emergency messages on it. So maybe a message like, stay put while we investigate the situation, and then a repeating message like an evacuation message that would repeat so that everybody could leave, even the person operating the system. You know, if you combine this PA system with, we have a number of speakers that are certified to meet UL standards for mass notification speakers, as well as plenum ceilings, and great for fire signal. If you paired these groups together, those speakers with this mixer amplifier, you would have an up-to-code or even a beyond-code system where you could provide a fantastic emergency paging system for your customer. Speakers that we've already talked about, like the FC horns, the F-series ceiling speakers, I didn't mention the PC580 RU ceiling speaker. All of these have different certifications and would make a fantastic paging system, an emergency paging system. Does your client have multiple offices, buildings? Maybe just next door, they want to be able to page into the building next door, or is the building on the other side of town? You can add our NX100 network adapter to both sound systems in both buildings and be able to page from one building and have the page broadcast in the other as well. This is great for perhaps a campus situation where there are a number of buildings on one property where paging needs to go, emergency paging especially. Maybe these are offices across town or even across the country. The network adapter, the NX100, converts just regular analog audio into this packet audio format that can be transmitted over your local area network or even a wide area network. So all pages can be sent to all buildings. And that allows a lot of opportunity. And, even I was thinking about things like transit systems. I mentioned school campuses. Anything that's spread out where there are multiple buildings, don't be afraid of working on those as well, because we can help you with that.